often hear that there's a discrepancy between how proficient children of color and minority students are and low income students, regardless of color, fare when it comes to third grade reading proficiency. Dr. Graham, can you talk about that discrepancy? Are you seeing it, and what's going on there?
Yes, the National Assessment of Education Progress data clearly indicate that there have been not only gaps in reading achievement, but persistent gaps. I'm talking dating all the way back to the 1980s. So we tend to see, unfortunately, that our students of color lag behind our Asian Pacific Islander students and our white students. And when you start disaggregating those data by gender, you see that our Black and Hispanic males lag significantly behind all other racial and ethnic groups. So the thing that I always like to point out, though, when I talk about reading proficiency and what we see relative to our NAEP data, if you look at the performance of our Asian Pacific Islander students and our white students, it's not like they're doing exceptionally well. They're doing well enough, but they're not really where we want them to be. So even our high achieving really isn't high achieving. So we really have to give more thought to how are we going about teaching reading to our young children? What science are we using? What evidence-based approach are we using? And are we using a consistent approach? Are we using an approach that eliminates variance? And part of what we have known for a while, and we continue to see, is not only do you see a great deal of variance across school districts when it comes to teaching reading, but you see a great deal of variance between schools within the district and even between classrooms within the school. So we've got to find a way to operationalize what the science of reading is so that there's a collective agreement and consensus so that we're teaching in a consistent way where we're eliminating the variance that we're seeing. Otherwise, I fear we're going to continue to see these types of persistent gaps and our high achieving students really not performing as high as we think they are.
Thank you very much. Dr. Soliday Hong, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would say that we don't see early neurological differences or learning differences with Black and Hispanic children versus Asian Pacific Islander and white children. And so these differences that we see largely are related to systemic access to resources and also related to measurement. There are ways that our measures still reflect kind of white middle class behavior and ways of interacting with children and wording of questions that reflect white middle class kinds of experiences that disadvantage kids on tests. And so there's an overhaul needed in the way that both we provide access to resources and instruction, and also the way we assess children so that there's a greater degree of equity.
Dr. Brach-Hines?
Yes, completely concur with Dr. Soliday Hong and Dr. Graham. And some demographers have worked on understanding the achievement gap, and it has closed, like from 1998 to 2010. There's some evidence of closure, but the evidence, it's such a slow rate that they say it could take 60 to 110 years before achievement or opportunity gaps are actually closed. And part of that is because what we've come to understand, and I think this is still emerging as evidence, but some of the gaps are already present at kindergarten entry. And so something has already occurred in the lives of these children or in the approaches to education that those gaps already exist. And so I think we really need to consider the life course of learning for students. And it really does begin at birth. And I think a lot of the initiatives that have been starting now, we think about Get Ready Guilford, that really recognize that we need to be there for families when those children are still in the womb. We really have to figure out how to support families in ways that's going to have down the road impacts for students.